Just a while ago, I spent several months in Israel on sabbatical study. And one day we were on the shore of Capernaum on the northern end of the Sea of Galilee. And our guide pointed over to the west to a break in the hills, and he said, "You see that? That's the Valley of the Doves. That's the way Jesus would have gone when he went home." Home. I remember being so struck by the word. Certainly I knew that Nazareth was Jesus' boyhood home. But going home is much more a matter of the heart than a matter of distance. Wouldn't it be wonderful, I thought, if time meant nothing and we could talk to a man who grew up with Jesus and we could listen to his stories? I imagined on the drone of the flies, and he smiled at me, and I understood. They strip their victims because they know we're a modest people. They crucify on the eve of Sabbath because they know we're religious. And now this Roman sat on his horse and smiled at me because he knew my country was his. This moment was his. Everything I cared about was his. And he knew that I knew it. And he smiled. And then he turned his horse about and he rode off at leisure. With the help of two Greeks who came by, who I knew from work, I got the body of Shua back to our camp, and so back home. He lay in a coma for 5 days. Only his shallow breathing told us he was alive at all. His mother wept over him and bathed him. I held his hand and kept squeezing it. Ellie kept talking to him in case he could hear us. And his father, Joseph, sat at his son's feet with his shawl over his head and prayed. "I have watered my bed with my tears, O my God. I have become like those who go down into the country of the dead. But you will rescue my soul. Into your hands I commend my spirit." And on the 5th day, Shua opened his eyes. In a short time, he was able to eat and to move around. But then whatever sympathy there was for us moved into resentment because Shua and I had broken Sabbath and the scandal would not go away. Rabbi Mordecai came to see Shua, and now he looked frail and old. And he said, "One day was given to us by the Lord God, blessed be he. One day on which we can say, He is Lord, He alone. We cannot undo all the pain, all the suffering, and all the death. We are not masters of the universe. He is Lord, and we are not. We are not. And you, Yeshua, by yourself, you could not give him this one day." Shua came over and put his hands on the rabbi's shoulders, and he said, "And is the old lady to starve then?" The rabbi shuddered. "That was different. That was different, Yeshua." "No, Father," Shua said. "No. You taught me well." And he kissed him. A few days later, the 8 of us who worked in Sepphoris were sitting around the fire again. And Reuben was breaking sticks and throwing them on a line into the flames. "The one thing," he said, "that we have is to be a Jew. The one thing that keeps us from the filth of the nations and the degradation of the Gentile is to be a Jew. Our most precious possession. And some would betray even that. Nobody said anything, not even Ellie. There was a terrible silence. And then Shua got up and came closer to the fire, and he said, the day we went to the crosses, I saw, you know him, Abiud, and he was leading his oxen to water, and it was Sabbath. But I understood. Understood what? Reuben said. Get to the point. Shua whirled around, reached down, grabbed Reuben by his tunic and hoisted him to his feet and shouted in his face, the point is, Abiud can take his cattle to what they need on Sabbath. But I can't give a boy on a cross a drink of water. Reuben gaped at him, and I think Shua must have seen the fear in his eyes, because he opened his hands and stepped back. And then he saw us all staring at him, and he went back and sat down next to me. No one spoke. What was there to say? But before we went to sleep, Shua said to me, I never thanked you enough for what you did for me. A man can have no greater love. I broke Sabbath, Shua, I said to him. Do you think so? He said. Yes, I do. I did then, and I do now. And I regret that night with all my soul. The only good thing that came from it was that I saw the Roman without his mask. I saw the face of the beast. You know how it is when you're in love and it starts to go wrong, and it's all coming apart, and you pretend it isn't happening. Nothing was the same for us after Joshua died. I'm not talking about that hard edge that life takes on when you get older. No, our jobs weren't exciting anymore, and we were into marriage and raising our families and those hardships. We were working at Nazareth now, and every night we'd go into the synagogue to discuss and to pray. But the discussions just kept ending in anger, and the prayer was tense. Aaron seemed more and more restless, as if he didn't even enjoy being with us anymore. The wonderful humor he used to have turned sarcastic and bitter. And we all worried about him. But more often than not, the anger and the tension were caused because Shua was in the synagogue. I remember one night, but this would be typical. We were discussing the kingdom of Israel and when it would come. And as the discussion went on, I watched my brother drift farther and farther away from us. Our new Rabbi Isaac, was saying, you are not to learn Torah. You are not to be students of the law. You are to be sons of Torah. You are to live it, to breathe it, to be it. And when you are so, you will sanctify the name, and the kingdom will come. There is more we have to do, Shua said. Just like that. There's more we have to do. We have to teach those who don't know Torah. We have to rescue the outcast because they have no one. It is not our job to teach Yeshua by Yosef, much less your job, said the rabbi. It is our job to live Torah and to be it. They have Moses, they have the prophets, just as we do. Let them learn. Shua, Jude said, trying to make peace. Does not the prophet say that in the day of the kingdom, he will write his law in our hearts, and there will be no need for teachers? No, Shua said. Just like that. No. No. We are to be what Isaiah said we are to be. The servants of all. We are to open the eyes of the blind. We are to unstop the ears of the deaf. We are to tend those who need us. What about the Romans? Reuben said. Shall we open their eyes, Shua? Shall we unstop their ears? Do we tend the Romans, Shua? I don't know, he said. I don't know. And those words, every man walked out of the synagogue, except for Eli and myself and Shua. Eli stooped down, and he picked up a handful of dirt, and he held it out in front of Shua. And he said, have you forgotten what they thought of Joshua? That's what they think of all of us. Eli, Shua said, I have to speak the truth as I see it. Are you afraid to hear the truth? Eli looked right into his eyes. I am not afraid to hear it because it's true, Shua. I am afraid to hear it because I love you and you're tearing us apart. Eli, Shua said, no. Eli put his hand over Shua's mouth. No, peace. Shalom, Yeshua bar Yosef. Peace, please. No more. No more. There was more. Our grief deepened when we heard that Aaron had stolen money from his father, called us all impotent fools, and gone away to live in Tiberias. Because by my own beliefs, I now had to regard Aaron, my dear childhood friend, as dead. Well, news came about a reformer named John the Baptizer. And we were excited because we thought this might signal the beginning of the kingdom. And several men of our village went down to see him and to find out what he was saying. And they came back impressed and more dedicated than ever to Torah. Shua went down to see him, and he stayed away a year. His parents seemed to accept this with serenity. But I saw his mother barely survive a serious illness. I saw his father starting to do the work of two men. I was the one who heard the criticism in the shop, in the marketplace, in the synagogue, leading me once to shout, "What are you asking me for? How am I supposed to know about him?" And feeling ashamed. And then one day when I was in the country and Joseph was working with only a boy apprentice, the support poles cracked and the logs fell on him. He lingered a day and he died. And he was mourned by his wife, by his cousins, by his many friends, and by me. And every tongue and eye said, "And where is his son?" One day at the end of work, we were sitting in the marketplace and we saw a figure appear by the well road. Tall man, rather thin, his face burned black by the sun. Shua. As he came up to us, we got up to him and just stared at him. And he gave us the full solemn greeting, the 3 kisses, holding us with his eyes, Ellie and I longest of all. And then he said to us, brothers, the kingdom of God that we have waited for so long, it has come. The kingdom of God is within you. No trace of a stammer. Every word clear and strong. He's found his words, I thought. And none of them make sense. Ellie said to him with some sadness, Shua, where have you been? Your mother. Ellie, he said, and he took him by the shoulders. Ellie, come with me. We'll tell all of Galilee. All of Galilee should know the news. He looked at us all with pathetic eagerness. You'll all come with me. We'll all tell them together. Shua, Reuben said, go home. Your mother is a widow. That was cruel. But at least it was real. Shua looked over to the doorway. His mother was standing there. And he went over, and she took him in her arms. I went with them to the grave. And Shua threw himself on the ground and sobbed. And 3 days after that, did wake for a total stranger. A tax collector living in the same shack that the old whore had lived in died. Shua heard about it, went out, buried the man, and did wake for him, as if anybody would come to the wake of a leech. Threw the dirt on his head, wailed for him. Then he came back into our village and asked us why we hadn't come. And he didn't bathe and became unclean and forced us to avoid him. The day after that, the Romans came into our village requisitioning. That's their word for robbing us of food. We stood on the sides of the square in icy silence and just watched them the way you watch insects in the dirt. Shua walked out to an auxiliary who was standing in the middle of the square, and he offered him bread. Family food. The sign of brotherhood. The auxiliary didn't know what to do. But before he could do anything, the centurion rode over and he said, don't eat that. This rat may have put poison in it. You see, they don't think we know any Greek. And they don't think we know their little joke that Romans think Jews look like the sewer rats of Rome. But Shua knew what he said. He broke the bread in half, bit off a portion from each side, and held it out to both of them. The centurion said, he's crazy. Let's get out of here. When they were gone, Eli walked out to Shua and he said, who are you? Where's my friend? He left here, you know, and was gone a long time, and he didn't come back. What did you do with him? Eli, Shua said, the kingdom is here. The hatred must end. And Eli spat full in his face. That is never, ever done among us. Never to a brother, no matter what the cause. And I think Eli regretted it instantly because he reached out with a kind of infinite grace and just wiped off the spittle. And then he turned and left the square. Eli! Shua cried. Eli! But he didn't come back, nor did anyone, for all had left the square, except me. I lingered to see Shua drop the bread into the dirt and just stand there, tears coming down his face. I saw him on the ledge that night, and I went up to reason with him. But I didn't, because when I got up to him, I heard him saying this, Abba, 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 Daddy. Now he mourns for Joseph, I thought. Now, when it's too late. His last day with us was a market day. He was sitting outside his house. The market was in full turmoil as usual, but people were avoiding that side of the square. I was sitting by the well, and I noticed that Shua was looking at every person and thing as if he had never seen it before. His eyes lingered on people and the animals and the shop wares. And then I felt his eyes come to me. They were there a long time, but I wouldn't look at him. And then there was a silence in the square, and I looked to my left, and it was Aaron. He was filthy, dressed in Gentile rags. His face was gaunt and bore the marks of disease. And he was looking across the square to his father and his brother, who were staring back at him in disbelief. "Father," he said, "I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am not worthy to be called your son. But please, Father, let me come home. Please." His father shook with emotion and said, "I had a boy like you once, but he got lost. I had another son, but he died." And he left the square. Aaron came running up and clutched his brother's arm. "Intercede for me, please, brother, you must." And the older boy said, "How can I be a brother to a Gentile and a thief?" Well, you know what happened, don't you? Of course you do. Shua went up to Aaron and said, "You can stay at my house." And Reuben shouted across the whole square, "That's right, Shua, take him in. Trash belongs with trash, garbage with garbage." Well, to give Aaron his due, he said, "No, Shua, no. I will not bring shame on your family." And he went off down the road he had come. "Shame," Shua said. "What shame that isn't here already? Family?" And he looked at all of us. "I have no family!" And a short while later, he was gone. The next thing we heard of him, he was in Capernaum, and he was preaching, and he was healing, and he was forgiving sins. Shua, with a group following him that was more deluded than he was and calling him Messiah. Messiah! They never came to ask us. They never came to us. Madness. And when his mother and I and some of the other relatives went down to talk to him, just to talk, and they told him his family was there, he looked at the scum he was sitting with, and he said, "Here's my family, here's my mother, my sister, and my brother." He said that to our face. "Oh, we came home once, and there was violence, but you can only insult what is precious to people so long before they'll strike back. And when he took that insane parade to Jerusalem, and they crucified him, you will understand if I say, we were not surprised." I didn't mean to sound harsh when I said that. I don't mean to sound cruel. I've described crucifixion for you, and no one should have to die that way. No one. It's just that Shua should have known. He should have. Well, anyway, after you know, it hurts so much in all this. It wasn't me and my people who deserted him when he needed us. We weren't the ones that left him all alone to face his enemies. We weren't the ones who finally broke his heart. It was all those he cared for who did that. My brother gave him everything he had, including the love he used to give me. And it meant nothing to them. That's what hurts. It hurts so bad. Because I still see him. Over and over, I see him. And he's standing there, and he's holding that water skin. And he's saying to me, come on. Come with me. I'm saying, where are you going, Shua? Where are you going?